On today's show, we bring on Nathan Grubel, an NBA draft expert, and we ask the question, are the Wizards one stud away?
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
DC family, you are locked on to the Washington Wizards, where you're part of our family. We thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen every single day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we're free and available every single day. The number one sports podcast network in the nation. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off on your first purchase. Alongside the DC Sports content creating Strober and Abdullah Ayubi, I'm Ben Strober, and I cover the Washington Wizards for Roundtable IO. And today, we're excited to be joined by Nathan Grubel from the Locked On NBA Draft Podcast with No Ceilings, the best daily podcast on the future stars of the NBA. Nathan has been covering the NBA draft and its prospects for over 15 years, so this should be a ton of fun. How's it going, my friend?
Ben, Abdul, I'm really enjoying myself. It's great to be here. I mentioned I got a little time off from the day job, so that means that I'm digging into a lot more film on prospects. I'm rounding out a lot of my evaluations for NBA guys within their first two seasons, and we're getting ready for an awesome calendar year of 2026 in basketball, guys.
Awesome. Let's get it going. We appreciate the work you do, of course, because we certainly don't have the time to study everyone that you have and all of that you've done for the channel as well. On today's show, we asked Nathan the question that a lot of Wizards fans are wondering: did the Wizards land two top 5 players in the 2024 draft class based on how guys like Sarr and Keyshawn George have played this year, who we also get in the 2025 draft class following Tre Johnson's breakout game last night? Was he actually a steal for the Wizards at 6? And lastly, we figure out, are the Wizards truly some lottery luck away from being a playoff contender in the Eastern Conference? Let's get right into it. Let's start with that 2024 draft class. I think Alex Sarr and Keyshawn George have made some decent headwaves this year, to say the least, in the NBA. Nathan, when you assess Sarr, I mean, I guess outside of last night, because that was definitely his worst performance of the year. Only took 5 field goal attempts, 2 points for Sarr, just 1 rebound as well, so it wasn't too aggressive from that standpoint. But when you look at the development you've seen from Alex Sarr from year 1 to year 2, are you surprised he's made the jump this quick? And how high were you on him as a prospect earlier in the process?
So let's kind of zoom out a little bit, right? Let's go big picture. So 2024 NBA draft class, I had Alex Sarr number 1 overall on my personal big board, and I had Stephon Castle right underneath him at number 2. We go through the rookie year. Stephon Castle wins NBA Rookie of the Year. Sarr didn't necessarily come out of the gates as strong, but really made a push later in the season, second half of the season, so much so that he really emerged on my radar as someone who I wanted to study very closely during his sophomore season, because I could sense that there was a leap coming. And a lot of that we've seen very early on this season, primarily around his shot selection, taking more of his shots inside the arc, being a little bit more aggressive, being activated in the middle of the floor. Obviously operating in that middle of the floor. It's not just from, a post-up standpoint or a face-up standpoint. You're seeing the playmaking really emerge from him as well. Obviously, you're seeing a lot of the rim protection. He had, 6 blocks in the game the other night. I mean, he's been very impressive protecting the rim all season long. I just actually published the sophomore rankings over at NoCeilingsNBA.com. Your listeners can go make sure they're subscribed for free to NoCeilingsNBA.com. Make sure they're checking out our written work. I had Alex Sarr number 2 in that sophomore rankings, just behind Stephon Castle. I think what Castle's done with the Spurs has been truly impressive, but I've been arguably even more impressed by Sarr. And I know that sounds weird. I'm saying he's ranked number 2 for me, not number 1 when I say that. But with Sarr, when we talk about the jump that he's making offensively, his assertiveness, he's doing it without a real quote-unquote point guard to steer the ship for him. I mean, CJ McCollum's been great for the Wizards as long as he's been there. We don't know if he's going to be there past the trade deadline. We don't know what's going to happen with CJ McCollum. And then Bub Carrington, someone who we're probably going to bring up in a little bit. I've gone back and forth with him. I've been a little hard on him to start his NBA career, primarily because I think he has great upside. I expect a lot out of him, but he hasn't been the best in terms of, pulling the levers at the same time and balancing the scoring and playmaking loads, right? When he's on the floor primarily to score the ball, he can do that and he'll get you an efficient number. If he's on the floor to just specifically make plays for others and pass the ball, he can get you 6-7 assists to just 2 turnovers. Have a great night. When he has to really toggle between doing both, as any young guard does in the NBA, he's struggled a little bit. So in my opinion, cover your ears, Wizards fans. I think this is one of the worst point guard rooms in the league, but that only speaks to how great Sarr's been to do what he's been doing on the floor without that natural guy to get him the ball. And also, as you guys know, he doesn't really have any backup center help, right? Like he's kind of out there himself as the primary big man. Marvin Bagley's been doing his best job, but not necessarily a guy you want to play alongside of Sarr. He doesn't really have that true backup to really spell him. He's playing a lot of minutes. He's producing in several different ways. The last nugget I'll leave you guys with Sarr is when I was doing the work to put that sophomore rankings together, when you look at a lot of his advanced statistics, the rebounding rates, assist rates, usage rates, block rates, how many minutes he's played and how effective he's been from three-point range, the only other guy in the NBA to match or exceed that production is Victor Wembanyama. So that's how special Sarr's been in his second year. I've truly been impressed with him.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up those points, Nathan, about the design of this team, the lack of big man depth and a pure point guard, because that's something that Ben and I always allude to when it comes to this team tanking. And it's essentially design and potentially landing a guy in Darryn Peterson. Wink, wink. We'll talk about that. But Alex Sarr, Nathan, I mean, outside of Wembanyama, defensively, he's a guy that I would love to have on my team when it comes to being a rim protector. Not too long ago, 6 blocks in the game, career high. And I think he can get 8 to 9 sooner because it's his second season. Keyshawn George, Nathan, how did he fall so far in that draft? Because there's an argument that he might be the best out of the 3. We love Bub Carrington. Wizards fans, I think a little more hard on Bub Carrington considering the fact that they traded Denny Avdia away to land a guy like Bub, but he's been playing a lot better from his sophomore season now compared to how we started it. But I want to talk about Keyshawn. I mean, was his role in Miami just not going to fit in what DC was trying to build at the time?
Sometimes it's very difficult to evaluate draft prospects from the sense of, you know, as someone who does as much work as he possibly can, but even those who are in NBA front offices, they don't always have the complete full picture of a prospect on every single prospect as we'd like to think that we do or they do. And so sometimes when you don't see a player exhibit certain things on the court in college, you're looking over that tape, you're studying it, you're looking at the numbers. You're not always seeing the full picture of things that they've done earlier in their careers, other latent skills that they have. And that's really been evident with Keyshawn George. Like right at Miami, he was primarily a spot up shooting threat, which is great. He's 6'8", he's strong, he can guard multiple positions and you can shoot. Generally, that's a pretty good formula in terms of translating to the NBA. You want to take a swing on that guy. But I'm not sure that everyone fully understood just how great he was as a ball handler, how he could take that evolution within his game so quickly in terms of being an on-ball playmaker for others. When you're really talking about tying out the rest of that dribble, pass, shoot, defense skill set that everyone's looking for, I think front offices, I think scouts, I think evaluators knew that he had 2 of those boxes either checked or close to being checked, but I don't think there was a full understanding of just how good he could be in terms of those other areas that others are able to benefit off of his offensive production, not just him going out there and making shots himself.
When you look at the production they've got out of him, because he's kind of played maybe even out of position from his realm, because he's taken some of those reins at point guard this year and helped out in terms of his role as a playmaker. I thought in year number 1, although he didn't play as much and it was a little bit more unknown with him, his playmaking ability actually did impress me from the smaller sample size that we saw. And it's impressed me as well here in year number 2. When you look at the production you get from him as a playmaker compared to what you've gotten from Bub Carrington as well, do you think the Wizards will transition him out of the role he's playing at if they do land a guy like Peterson? Like, how could you see him evolve his role? Or could you just see him be this versatile player that he is now from like a broader standpoint, just on a better team? Like, where are we seeing this go if the Wizards do land somebody really good to play point guard in the future?
I think the Wizards are absolutely looking for someone to step into that point guard role, but I also don't think it's going to take away from this franchise doing something that they've done really well over the last 2 years, which is be open-minded and experimental, right? Like this team, you look at just even the pick and roll reps as a creator that Bilal Coulibaly's gotten over the last few years. I mean, he's not necessarily someone who you'd look at face value and say, I want this guy operating, with the ball in his hands and in a higher usage on ball roll like that all the time. But before this season where he's had some injury trouble, his volume in terms of how many pick and roll possessions he ran per synergy was significantly higher than any other place that he had been at in his career before he got to the NBA as far as running that specific play type of offense. So you have someone like him they're willing to give the reins to. We've talked about Bub Carrington. We're going to talk about Tre Johnson, I think, is someone who you also want to see get more of those on-ball reps. I think the way that Washington wants to build this team is 5 guys on the floor who can dribble, pass, shoot, defend. And that means you're not necessarily looking at one particular player to soak up the usage. You're looking at a bunch of different guys expected to handle the ball and be able to make decisions, make plays for others, regardless of where the possession's at in the shot clock. So I do think even if Keyshawn George isn't the quote-unquote jumbo point guard of the future for the Wizards, I would very much expect to see him continue to get a significant number of touches as a secondary or even a tertiary option within the offense, because if you only have him on the floor as a shooter, you're going to get some value from him, obviously, if he's making those shots, but you're not really unlocking the full potential of Keyshawn. So I expect this Wizards coaching staff, this Wizards front office to stay open-minded, experimental, and really get multiple guys the ball, moving forward in the years to come.
To put you on the spot really quick before we get to the next segment here, do the Wizards have 2 top 5 players from that 2024 class, yes or no?
It's very possible that they do. At this current moment in time in my rankings, I had Keyshawn at 7. I did not have him inside that top 5, but he certainly has the upside to be one of these, top 5 sophomores that we look at in the future moving forward from this 2024 class. You
got it. All right. I'll definitely take that. When we come back, let's break down Tre Johnson's breakout performance and hear a little bit about Nathan's pre-draft determinations about Tre Johnson. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during the Happy Hour always brings something new: boosts, bonuses, and surprises. It's easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. The timing is perfect right before games, right before the weekend starts. It adds extra energy to Friday night basketball without even having to overthink it. So right before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour, only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
Nathan, when Cooper Flag fell or the Wizards couldn't land him in the sweepstakes, Ben and I were a little disappointed, and a lot of Wizards fans were. But then on draft night, when Tre Johnson miraculously fell into our laps at 6, we were happy. I mean, this is a guy who we saw what he did in Texas, played lights out, 3-way scorer, just did everything right for that squad at such a young age. And to start off his rookie campaign was a little slow. Didn't see much of him. We didn't understand that. But then we found out the whole hip injury, the minute restrictions. Last night, 24 points. I mean, he was pulling up from Tyson's corner, Nathan. What do you make of how his draft process was and his rookie campaign so far?
None of the shooting stuff that he's going to do will surprise me. The parking lot range, the 30-foot bombs, that's not going to shock me based on what I saw from him pre-draft. What I've seen in terms of over the last few games, how he's continuously evolved as an offensive player has been some of the passing that we've actually seen him do. When he's getting 2 feet in the paint, he's making that next read, finding someone on the dump-off pass, spraying that ball back out. Obviously, you're looking at Tre Johnson first and foremost to catch the ball and score or shoot, depending on the position of the floor that he's in when he initially catches the ball. But it's those secondary aspects that are really going to make everyone else around him better and provide the most offensive value to this Wizards team moving forward. If you're going to put the ball in Tre Johnson's hands for a significant amount of possessions, that means he has to be able to make that next read. If he can't, this team's going to find someone who will do that, who may also end up bringing something more on the defensive end of the floor as well. So I want to see Tre Johnson continue to evolve as a defender, keep showing some of those passing elements. But in terms of the scoring, the shooting, 20-plus points a night, 20-plus point performances, I knew that he can do that. I think everyone knew that he can do that. It's those other little things that he's starting to bring to the table where I feel really confident that the Wizards are also evaluating those things properly and that they're going to keep putting the ball in his hands, because if you're only drafting Tre Johnson at 6 to be a movement shooter, you can find other guys on cheaper contracts who can do that for you. It's all of the other things that he showed at Texas and what he can be as a pick and roll ball handler potentially moving forward. Another one of these guys who can work out of a handoff, work out of a pick and roll, second side actions, and make that next decision for someone else as much so as someone who can get the ball up and get a good shot off, late in the shot clock.
So we're not really going to have these like rookie of the year conversations with Johnson. I think the minutes restrictions and then missing some time will put him out of contention for potentially being within the range to win a reward like that or be in the conversation. But when you look at his production when he's been on the floor and he's had the ability to kind of have free reign the way he has the past couple weeks, how do you see him stacking up amongst some of the other guys that are at the top of the race right now? Cooper Flagg, obviously, who started to emerge as a star in Dallas. VJ Edgecombe has been very, very good in his rookie season for the 76ers. Where have you seen him kind of stack up with the other rookies in this loaded class?
I would definitely have Tre Johnson as long as he continues to progress the way that he has been over the last few weeks. I think he can finish second team all rookie. I believe that's where I predicted that he would finish. Before the season, I had him second team all rookie preseason. I think in terms of first team all rookie expectations, that might be a little lofty just based on how good some of these guys have been right out of the gate. And then even not too long into the season, you saw someone like a Derek Queen really start rolling. But guys like Cooper Flagg has really come on strong to the point where I would vote him rookie of the year today. Con Knippel in Charlotte has been terrific. Cedric Howard has been terrific in Memphis. VJ Edgecombe, like you talked about, Ben, got off to one of the best starts of any rookie that we've seen in the NBA in terms of his first few scoring performances. And then he really had a dip in Philly, but he's really picked it back up of late once they've gotten more situated as far as his role on the floor, put Jared McCain in those backup point guard minutes, had VJ operate more as like a tertiary kind of guy. You've seen the best come out of him. So I think it would be difficult for Tre Johnson to crack into that group. But in terms of competing with guys like Dylan Harper, Jeremiah Fears, Maxime Reynaud, Ryan Kalkbrenner, I think he's very much in that mix. And I'd be shocked at this point, as long as he keeps doing what he's doing, to not finish second team all rookie.
What would you say his NBA comparison would be, Nathan, when it comes to his ceiling? And how different do you think Tre Johnson's game would be if he played alongside a point guard like a Darryn Peterson?
That's a great question. I don't know if I have an incredible ceiling comparison for him. If I'd have to throw something out, I mean, I think a good median comparison for him would be Buddy Hield. But if I'm throwing out like true upside ceiling, maybe somewhere in the vein of like a Zach LaVine. I know he's not that athletic, that bouncy, but in terms of just being that type of reliable shooter, you can put him anywhere on the floor. You trust that he's going to get you a bucket. And then when he has to be put in positions to make that next pass, I mean, Zach LaVine's not known for being an all-world passer, but he can certainly move the ball, when he gets into his spots, when he gets 2 feet in the paint, he can be a reliable playmaker for you. So that to me is the ultimate type of upside for Tre, someone who is consistently giving you 25 to 27 points a night while also being that trustworthy playmaker if he's put in the position to do so. And I do think, given his 6'6" size, his length, I think there is some more upside to unlock with him on the defensive end of the floor as well. He just has to be committed to it. He has to give the energy to it. And most importantly, he's going to need that coaching staff to really bring him along on that side, on that end of the floor.
Real quick before we get to the next segment, Nathan, do you have any thoughts on Will Riley? I know he's kind of been in and out of the rotation for the Wizards. Where were you on him pre-draft? He ended up going 21 to this Wizards team after winning Big Ten Sixth Man of the Year. What have you made of him so far in his rookie year in limited time?
He's been very interesting to try and watch, again, in limited minutes for the Wizards. I did watch some of his G League performances in particular, and that tape was pretty awesome. I mean, he was showing everything that you would want to see from him that he showed at Illinois. You know, obviously being that jumbo wing creator, the ability to play in pick and roll, get downhill, create rim pressure, but also really just hit shots in a variety of ways. I think probably the most surprising aspect of his game that's translated so quick has been, you know, some of the mid-range pull-up scoring. It's not just some of the threes. You really see Will Riley getting to his shot effectively inside the arc off the bounce, and he has the confidence and the willingness to take those shots and make those shots. So it's not just some of the passing vision, some of the pick and roll play, the ability to hit some of those quote-unquote star type of pull-up jump shots in the mid-range. I think Wizards fans should be very encouraged by what they're seeing early on, and as he develops, fills out his frame, gets stronger, very intriguing player to look forward with, someone who I would consider part of this young core that Washington's building with.
When we come back, we find out if the Wizards add one of these studs in the top 3 of this NBA draft to this young core, just how far could that take them as early as next year? During basketball season, there's nothing like being in a building. The energy, the crowd, that first big run that gets everyone on their feet. Fans want to be there for those moments, not stuck refreshing screens or guessing what tickets are really going to cost. That's where Game Time comes in. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage back, making it incredibly easy to score amazing tickets, fast, simple, and without the guesswork. Browsing the Game Time app is straightforward and intuitive. Finding tickets takes just a few taps. Seeing the view from your seat before buying makes choosing tickets easy and confident. Prices include fees up front, so the total is clear from the start. Features like zone deals help unlock great seats at even better value. Whether it's an NBA game or another live event, everything is right there in one place. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today and get in on the action. So Nathan, watched your pod from earlier today titled Ranking the Tank, which teams need the number 1 pick the most in this upcoming draft class. And you spent a lot of time talking about our Washington Wizards. And
Thank you, by the way, Nathan.
Pretty obvious that someone that's covering who's going to get the number 1 pick or who needs a number 1 pick, the Wizards would definitely fall as a top priority team in that category. You brought up one point, though, that I'm very intrigued with. You said that you felt like if this Wizards team landed a Darryn Peterson or a Cameron Boozer or maybe an AJ Dybantsa, that if they made some other ancillary moves, maybe some other veteran pieces to supplement at that point alongside with this young core, you could see them be a potential playoff contender maybe as early as next season. Can you tell us why you think that?
So the whole point of that podcast was primarily to outline the lottery race as it stands, but really zoom in on teams that I feel like are truly, if they got one of those top 3 guys, how quickly could they legitimately surge up the standings into the play-in race and maybe get themselves out of the play-in and into the playoffs? And Washington and Utah were the 2 teams that intrigued me the most from that perspective. I know we're not talking Utah today, we're talking Washington, but when I look at all 3 of these top prospects, AJ Dybantsa out of BYU, Darryn Peterson out of Kansas, and Cam Boozer out of Duke, they are all 1A caliber prospects. And I do think the Wizards already have a young core of legitimate budding stars. We've already talked about Alex Sarr. We've talked about Keyshawn George. And then we've talked about Tre Johnson. That is a legitimate offensive firepower trio to really start building around, who don't necessarily take things off the table defensively. And I believe that all 3 of these top prospects are very much suited to play both ends of the floor in different ways. So now when you're talking about a 4-man nucleus that can compete with some of these bigger lineups that we see in the NBA, again, you're talking about, if you're adding one of these 3 guys, finding whether it's a veteran point guard or another big man, adding some more wing depth alongside of these guys. These moves, just given Washington's chest of assets, both to use in the draft, to trade, some of the other contracts that they can put together, this is a front office that can get really aggressive really fast if they land one of these top guys. Now, if I'm looking at this situation in particular, if Washington gets the number 1 overall pick, we talked about 2 guys who I really think could fit the bill for them. I know Abdullah mentioned Darryn Peterson out of Kansas. He could be that quote-unquote point guard for them, not necessarily in the traditional point guard sense, but would be much more of a significant upgrade over what they have now. He's a more athletic version of a CJ McCollum, someone who actually puts downhill pressure on the rim, someone who can work in a 2-man game alongside someone like an Alex Sarr. And then he can give you that ideal combination of dribble, pass, shoot, and then backcourt defense. He's one of the best stocks guys that we have in terms of evaluating these top prospects, getting steals, blocks, creating deflections, and getting this team out running in transition, which fits what the Washington Wizards love to do. This is a very fast-paced team. They love to get out in the break. Someone like Darryn Peterson would give them another outlet to actually get all the way to the basket and get some of those buckets in transition at the rim versus just sprint into the three-point line and try and get a shot up to keep the pace up. So Darryn, and then the guy who I might actually like the most for this Wizards team would be Cam Boozer. Right now at this moment, Cam Boozer's number 1 on my personal board, averaging 23, 10, and 4 at the college level on efficient splits. His rebounding rates, his assist rates, his steal rates, block rates, everything across the board. When you factor in his 31.2 usage rate, it's all ridiculous, right? And the type of player that he is, that instinctual, quick decision maker, someone who can make everyone else around him better through his passing. He doesn't just pass and create that next shot with his pass. He passes guys open. He finds guys on the move. He finds guys in the corners. He's the best outlet passer that we see in college basketball right now in terms of actually getting the ball up the floor to someone in transition, not just passing the ball ahead just to pass it ahead, but finding the guy who's in the best position to score. He's that type of cerebral playmaker that I think the Wizards could use more of. It wouldn't be in the traditional point guard sense, but you can operate with Boozer in the middle of the floor. You can run high-low actions with him and Alex Sarr. You can run a 4-5 pick and roll with him and Alex Sarr. You can have him work with someone like a Keyshawn George, have Cam Boozer in the short roll, have him work with someone like a Bilal or a Tre Johnson in the middle of the floor. So I think the versatility that Cam Boozer would give them offensively would be an incredible fit. And he also just adds more rebounding support in general alongside Sarr. That's been one of the Wizards' weak points, is Sarr isn't always the best on the glass. That would give them another big body to have next to him who also doesn't take anything off the table from an offensive standpoint.
Man, seeing these options, Nathan, it's like a kid in a candy store when it comes to being a Wizards fan right now, because this season, as much as we love the development of our young guys, it's all about this draft coming up, and we're hoping that this year you don't fall out of the top 4. Wizards fans are crossing their fingers, but AJ Johnson, Nathan, just how great you think he can be when it comes to him as a prospect. Every time I see a BYU game, it's like he's averaging a triple-double, and he's just dominating at a level that we just maybe haven't seen. I mean, how would you compare his college career so far with the Cooper Flag, and do you think he's going to end up a more polished prospect compared to Flag when he essentially declares for the draft?
This has been a popular question in terms of if Cooper never reclassified, where would he fall amongst these guys, right? Like, I would still have Cooper Flag number 1 ahead of any of these guys. I think he was that legitimately dominant of a prospect, showing all of the things that you would want out of a big wing at the college level. And we've seen that already translate at the NBA level. It's the three-point shot is the only thing that hasn't been there for Flag right out of the gate. Everything else has been spectacular from him. But AJ Dybantsa in particular at BYU, he's very close to moving to number 1 on my board. He's been that spectacular with what he's shown at BYU. I think the biggest thing that stood out to me, and I got to see him in person at Madison Square Garden against Clemson, I haven't seen a prospect in this draft class take over a game like I've seen Dybantsa do now multiple times, being that hub in the middle of the floor, being that guy who can post up a bigger man, can hunt for that mismatch, can pass guys open, can score out of the mid-range. When he's open from the corner, he can hit that catch and shoot 3. And then defensively, when he's actually locked in and engaged, especially on the ball, he might be the best on-ball perimeter defender in this draft class. So I think that he is a consistent outside perimeter jump shot, and obviously refining some of his decision-making on the ball, refining a little bit of his ball handling. His handle can get a little wide when he tries to crash into too many defenders, taking some of those driving angles, but shoring up some of his off-ball defense, shoring up that handle, and then getting that three-point shot in check. He's not that far away from being a legitimate superstar wing caliber scorer in the NBA. This class All three of these guys, I just want to make this very clear for everyone listening to this podcast. All three of these guys are 1A prospects. I could legitimately at the end of the year not even have 1, 2, and 3 on my board, just have 1A, 1B, 1C, because I think team fit, style are going to depend more than ever with these three guys. I think all three of these guys could be multi-time all-stars in several different places in this lottery.
Well, I'm glad that you bring up that all these guys are 1A players, meaning that if the Wizards do stay in the top 3 in this lottery, they're probably looking pretty golden. But God forbid something happens like last year, they fall to 6 maybe again, which is where they ended up last year. What are the Wizards looking at there real quick before we let you go?
Well, we've talked at length that the Wizards need a point guard. And the good news for Wizards fans, there's a ton of them in this lottery. I can't remember a single class where I've had this many point guards ranked inside about the top 17. Just on my board, I know I got to update it heading into January, but on my last board, Kingston Flemings out of Houston, LeBaron Filan out of Alabama, Christian Anderson out of Texas Tech, Michael Brown out of Louisville, Bennett Sturts in Iowa, Darius Acuff at Arkansas. I mean, that's 6 point guards. If we're not counting Darryn as a point guard, that's like 5 or 6 guys just there in the top 17 on my board who could be there for the taking with Washington if they fell a little bit in the lottery. So I think even if they fell and they lucked out and got one of those guys, I think they'd be in great shape moving forward. And you'd at the very least have one box checked, building around the rest of this young core.
Sorry, I'm a big UNC guy, so I have to ask Caleb Wilson, Nathan, what are your thoughts on him?
Number 4 overall on my board. I don't foresee that changing in my January update. He is the best athlete that we have in this draft class. I think he's a better athlete than AJ Dybantsa, full stop. I think he's more dynamic than Darryn Peterson. The things that he does, he's a walking double-double. He's a stocks machine. The thing that I want to keep monitoring with Wilson for both scouts and UNC fans moving forward is his game 100% predicated on the athleticism, or are we going to see some more skilled elements, pop from him as far as being more of a downhill passer, as far as being a passer out of double teams in the post, as far as improving his layup numbers and not just being a dunk machine? Because as we know, watching these guys in the NBA, they can get hurt. And if they get hurt, they lose some of that athleticism. What do they end up being as players? If their game's truly only predicated on their athleticism, that doesn't age as well as some of these other guys who have a little bit more skill, a little bit more feel to bring to the table. So I want to watch that development from Caleb Wilson moving forward.
Awesome. A lot to think about, a lot to ponder here, and keep fresh in the back of your head if you're a Wizards fan here. Remember that the ultimate goal for this year is to be a team that is in contention to get that number 1 overall pick, have a chance to get a franchise-altering player. So plenty of great information here, a lot of good insight. Nathan, we appreciate you coming on the podcast, giving us some time today, man.
Absolutely, guys. Go Wizards.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go. All right, that'll do it for us today, everybody. We thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen every single day. Big shout out to our guest today, Nathan Grubel. Be sure to check him out on the X app for all kinds of draft insights. His @ is Draft Deeper. Be sure to check out his channel, Locked On NBA Draft, with No Ceilings podcast, the best you can find out there right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. For our guest Nathan, for Abdullah Ayubi, my co-host, I'm Ben Strober, DC Family. We'll talk to you later.